Hey Adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for Gloves of Eons by Andrew D. Meredith. This is the third book in the Kallattian Saga. This is an epic fantasy, it's a high fantasy, there's a lot of religious and political storytelling going on, we'll call it that. And a lot of the story revolves around in-world religions and in-world politics. So this one I received an audiobook in exchange for an honest review. It was an ARC actually, technically an advanced reader's copy, and so I was able to read it and get the review out for today. So before I get into this, I'd really quickly like to say if you're liking what you're seeing from an Erudite adventure, we'd really appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. So of course this is the third book in the Kallattian Saga. I actually reread books 1 and 2 in preparation for book 3, and it really helped me to figure out some of the things that I was a little bit confused on or didn't fully grasp the first time through. And so this second time through I got caught up and was ready to go right into book 3, which I actually did. I reread book 1 and then I had a couple books in between that, and then I listened to book 2 and then I listened to book 3 right after that. So it's one right after another, which is sometimes really fun to do. So Gloves of Eons doesn't really pick up where I expected it to, which is to say not exactly where book 2 left off, but as I started into the book, I quickly realized that not only was it the right place to pick back up, but it was also where I wanted it to pick up. It gave us a little bit of time, a couple months, 2 months or something like that. I don't remember exactly the timeline difference, but it was a couple months after the events of the end of book 2 to the events of the beginning of book 3, and the time span was actually just the perfect amount because it allowed some things to progress in ways that we didn't need to see, but felt like the world was still progressing because they wouldn't have added really anything to the story. Most of our characters have gone their separate ways after the events of the ends of Bone Shroud, which is book 2, but they're not so far that we feel like we've missed their stories. I mean, 2 months with relatively little happening doesn't feel like we lost part of the story. Hannon and Ralia are still together, but they're basically the only thing in the same place as they were at the end of book 2. We find out that the Black Sentinels have taken a major blow to themselves, at least in Manfolhar. The events of Bone Shroud caused some issues for the Black Sentinels, especially in Manfolhar. But Ophelia's story is never very far away from that of the Clows, but it's definitely its own thing. She's got her own story that goes on throughout this whole book, even at the same time, or even while she's in the same place and doing the same things as the Clows are. Unexpectedly, I was far more invested in characters in this book than I had been in previous books. And by this I mean that characters who I didn't expect to be invested in were the ones that I ended up wanting to follow the most. I still love Jenid's story and the way that it develops through this book, but honestly I found myself wanting to follow Dane more than we did even, but definitely more than I'd ever wanted to in previous books. He's an infuriating character, but that's because of how real he is and how you can look back into your life and be like, oh, I know a person who's exactly like this character. But I wanted to root for him so bad, and it feels really weird to be so infuriated by a character but want to root for him. The scattered hero moments that he has just don't allow you to hate the guy, and he's growing. It's slow, but he is actually growing, and I love to see that. As far as Jenid goes, he's struggling. Books 1 and 2 were really about him finding and striving for deeper faith and becoming the Hammer of Grisone. But here, he's in a very different place. He was warned and informed of it in book 2, but the effects of it are really starting to show up now, and I'm not going to go into that because it has to do with the vows that he's taken and the way that they lead him in his faith and the way that interacts, but it's causing things to happen differently than they had in the first 2 books, and it's hard on Jenid, and I really appreciate seeing that, even though I also want to see more of like Dane in his storyline and stuff like that. I also found that I was really enjoying Katiem's storyline in this one. She's one of the characters who I've kind of been sort of invested in, but really not extremely invested in up until this book. She's a major character, she's super important, but this book took her and invested me in her journey far more than the first 2 books had, especially all the stuff with Little Rose and all that has to do with that. I will say this one did feel a little bit slower to me though, and that could have had something to do with having just finished Bone Shroud and then going immediately into Gloves of Eons. And what I mean by that is not that I want to not be reading this book, but rather that Bone Shroud, the ending of it, there's so much going on and it's happening so fast and so action-packed. And then you get into Gloves of Eons and it kind of slows down. You take a step back, you have to start redeveloping a story again. And I'm not sure that I was quite ready for that switch. But while this book did have a fair amount of action, it didn't seem as action-heavy as the first two books. It was much more political, with the various religions and sects vying for power. The fallout of the Paladins and the Modian sect and everything is really at the forefront of this book. Again, there's plenty of excellent world building in this story, including the incorporation of one of my favorite mythical creatures, and just an amazing scene involving that. But we also learn more about the gods. There's a really creepy but interesting scene regarding one of the gods and one of the other characters. I'm not going to spoil who, but just a very interesting scene there. But there's so much more. We get more world building. We get to go visit more places, or sometimes we get to go visit places that we'd already been once, type thing, and just to see them from in a different angle, different light, and that's really cool as well. But there's just a ton that's happening in this book, even if it's not quite so battle action heavy. Overall, I just really enjoyed this book and I'm really enjoying this series. Deathless Beast and Bone Shroud are both fantastic, and this just continues to make you love the series, make you love Meredith's writing. I still haven't read his Needle and Leaf series, so I do have a little bit more to read in order, or before the release of book 4, thankfully, so that I'm not just going months without another book from him. But he's also got a prequel novella that, a Kallattian prequel novella that I can read that I haven't read yet. So definitely more for me to read, and I'm excited to keep going with this author. So that is my review for Gloves of Eons by Andrew D. Meredith. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay well.